Relational versus document databases today. There are many differences to consider when comparing relational databases to document databases, including their fault tolerance properties, see Chapter 5, and handling of concurrencies, see Chapter 7. In this chapter, we will concentrate only on the differences in the data model. The main arguments in favor of the document data model are schema flexibility, better performance due to locality, and that for some applications, it is closer to the data structures used by the application. The relational model counters by providing better support for joins and many-to-one and many-to-many relationships. Which data model leads to simpler application code? If the data in your application has a document-like structure, i.e. a tree of one-to-many relationships, where typically the entire tree is loaded at once, then it's probably a good idea to use document model. The relational technique of shredding, splitting a document-like structure into multiple tables like positions, education, and contact underscore info in figure 2.1 can lead to cumbersome schemas and unnecessarily complicated application code. The document model has limitations. For example, you cannot refer directly to a nested item within a document, but instead, you need to say something like the second item in the list of positions for user 251, much like an access path in the hierarchical model. However, as long as documents are not too deeply nested, that is not usually a problem. The poor support for joins in document databases may or may not be a problem, depending on the application. For example, many-to-many relationships may never be needed in an analytics application that uses a document database to record which events occurred at which time. However, if your application does use many-to-many relationships, the document model becomes less appealing. It's possible to reduce the need for joins by denormalizing, but then the application code needs to do additional work to keep the denormalized data consistent. Joins can be emulated in application code by making multiple requests to the database, but that also moves complexity into the application and is usually slower than a join performed by a specialized code inside database. In such cases, using document model can lead to significantly more complex application code and worse performance. It's not possible to say in general which data model leads to simpler application code. It depends on the kinds of relationships that exist between data items. For highly interconnected data, the document model is awkward. The relational model is acceptable, and graph models, see graph-like data models, are the most natural. Schema flexibility in the document model. Most documents databases and the JSON support in relational databases do not enforce any schema on the data in the documents. XML support in relational database usually come with optional schema validation. No schema means that arbitrary keys and values can be added to a document, and when reading, clients have no guarantees as to what fields the documents may contain. Document databases are sometimes called schemaless, but that's misleading as the code that reads the data usually assumes some kind of structure, i.e., there is an implicit schema, but it is not enforced by the database. A more accurate term is schema on read. The structure of the data is implicit and only interpreted when the data is read, in contrast with schema on write, the traditional approach of relational databases, where the schema is explicit and the database ensures all written data conforms to it. Schema on read is similar to dynamic runtime type checking in programming languages, whereas schema on write is similar to static compile time type checking. Just as the advocates of static and dynamic type checking have big debates about their relative merits, Enforcement of schema in database is a contentious topic, and in general, there's no right or wrong answer. The difference between the approaches is particularly noticeable in situations where an application wants to change the format of its data. For example, say you are currently storing each user's full name in one field and you instead want to store the first name and last name separately. In a document database, you would just start writing new documents with the new fields and have code in the application that handles the case when all documents are read. For example, if user and end user.name and not user.firstname inside it, user.first_name equal user.name.split argument empty and 0. It means documents written before December 8, 2013 don't have first name. On the other hand, in a statically typed database schema, you would typically perform a migration along the lines of alter table, users, add column, first_name, text, semicolon, next line, update users, set, first_name equals split underscore part, argument name, comma, empty, comma, 1, semicolon, PostgreSQL. Next line, update users, set first_name equals substring underscore index argument name, comma, empty, comma, 1 for MySQL. Schema changes have a bad reputation of being slow and requiring downtime. This reputation is not entirely deserved. Most relational database systems execute the alter table statement in a few milliseconds. MySQL is a notable exception. It copies the entire table on alter table, which can mean minutes or even hours of downtime when altering a large table, although various tools exist to work around this limitation. Running the update statement on a large table is likely to be slow on any database, since every row needs to be rewritten. If that is not acceptable, the application can leave first_name set to its default of null and fill it in at read time, like it would with a document database. The schema on read approach is advantageous if the items in the collection don't all have the same structure for some reason, i.e. the data is heterogeneous, for example, because there are many different types of objects and it's not practical to put each type of object in its own table. The structure of the data is determined by external systems over which you have no control and which may change at any time. In situations like this, a schema may hurt more than it helps, and schemaless documents can be a much more natural data model. But in cases where all records are expected to have the same structure, schemas are a useful mechanism for documenting and enforcing that structure. We will discuss schemas and schema evolution in more detail in Chapter 4. Data locality for queries. A document is usually stored as a single continuous string, encoded as JSON, XML, or binary variant thereof, such as MongoDB's BSON. If your application often needs to access the entire document, for example, to render it on a web page, there is a performance advantage to this storage locality. If data is split across multiple tables like in Figure 2.1, multiple index lookups are required to retrieve it all, which may require more disk, seeks, and take more time. The locality advantage only applies if you need large parts of the document at the same time. The database typically needs to load the entire document even if you access only a small portion of it, which can be wasteful on large documents. On updates to a document, the entire document usually needs to be rewritten. Only modifications that don't change the encoded size of a document can easily be performed in place. For these reasons, it is generally recommended that you keep documents fairly small and avoid writes that increase the size of a document. These performance limitations significantly reduce the set of situations in which document databases are useful. It's worth noting out that the idea of grouping related data together for locality is not limited to the document model. For example, Google Spanner Database offers the same locality properties in a relational data model by allowing the schema to declare that a table's row should be interleaved, nested within a parent table. Oracle allows the same, using a feature called multi-table index cluster tables. The column family concept in the big table data model used in Cassandra and HBase has a similar purpose of managing locality. We will also see more on locality in Chapter 3. Convergence of document and relational databases. Most relational database systems other than MySQL have supported XML since the mid-2000s. This includes functions to make local modifications to XML documents and the ability to index and query inside XML documents, which allow applications to use data models very similar to what they would do when using a document database. PostgreSQL since version 9.3, MySQL since version 5.7, and IBM DB2 since version 10.5 also have a similar level of support for JSON documents. Given the popularity of JSON for web APIs, it is likely that other relational databases will follow in their footsteps and add JSON support. On the document database side, RethinkDB supports relational-like joins in its query language, and some MongoDB drivers automatically resolve database references, effectively performing a client-side join, although this is likely to be slower than a join performed in the database since it requires additional network round trips and is less optimized. It seems that relational and document databases are becoming more similar over time, and that is a good thing. The data models complement each other. If a database is able to handle document-like data and also perform relational queries on it, applications can use the combination of features that best fits their needs. A hybrid of the relational and document models is a good route for databases to take in the future. Query languages for data. When the relational model was introduced, it included a new way of querying data. SQL is a declarative query language, whereas IMS and Codacil query the database using imperative code. What does that mean? Many commonly used programming languages are imperative. For example, if you have a list of animal species, you might write something like this to return only the sharks in the list. Function getShark, inside it var sharks equal empty array, next line for var I equals 0 semicolon I less than animals.length semicolon I plus plus. Inside it, if animals argument I, argument array with I, parameter array with I as an argument dot family equal string shard, inside it sharks dot push animal parameter array with an argument I semicolon, then close semi-curly bracket close semi return sharks. In the relational algebra, you would instead write sharks equal theta family sigma family equal string shard raised to argument animals, where sigma, the Greek letter sigma, is the selection operator, returning only those animals that match the condition family equals string shards. When SQL was defined, it followed the structure of the relational algebra fairly closely. Select asterisk from space animals space where space family equal string sharks semicolon. An imperative language tells the computer to perform certain operations in a certain order. You can imagine stepping through the code line by line, evaluating conditions, updating variables, and deciding whether to go around the loop one more time. In a declarative query language, like SQL or relational algebra, you just specify the pattern of the data you want, what conditions the result must meet, and how you want the data to be transformed, i.e. sorted, grouped, and aggregated, but not how to achieve that goal. It is up to the database system's query optimizer to decide which indexes and which join methods to use, and in which order to execute various parts of the query. A declarative query language is attractive because it is typically more concise and easier to work with than an imperative API. But more importantly, it also hides implementation details of the database engine, which makes it possible for the database system to introduce performance improvements without requiring any changes to queries. For example, in the imperative code shown at the beginning of this section, the list of animals appears in a particular order. If the database wants to reclaim unused disk space behind the scenes, it might need to move records around, changing the order in which the animals appear. Can the database do that safely without breaking queries? The SQL example doesn't guarantee any particular ordering, and so it doesn't mind if the order changes. But if the query is written as imperative code, the database can never be sure whether the code is relying on the ordering or not. The fact that SQL is more limited in functionality gives the database much more room for automatic optimizations. Finally, declarative languages often lend themselves to parallel execution. Today, CPUs are getting faster by adding more cores, not by running at significantly higher clock speeds than before. Imperative code is very hard to parallelize across multiple cores and multiple machines because it specifies instructions that must be performed in a particular order. Declarative languages have a better chance of getting faster in parallel execution because they specify only the pattern of the results, not the algorithm that is used to determine the results. The database is free to use a parallel implementation of the query language, if appropriate. Declarative queries on the web. The advantages of declarative query languages are not limited to just databases. To illustrate the point, let's compare declarative and imperative approaches in a completely different environment, in a web browser. Say you have a website about animals in the ocean. The user is currently viewing the page on sharks. So you mark the navigation item sharks as currently selected like this. UL nested li class with a class attribute equal code selected, then close with the nested p sharks and closing p. Under it you have ul with the nested li great white shark, closing li, then next line li tiger shark, closing li, then next line li hammer head shark, closing li, then out nest to ul again and out nest to its closing li, then another opening li with the nested p whales as a title, then next under it is ul, then li blue whale, li humpback whale, li fin whale. So first, the selected item is marked with the CSS class selected. P sharks closing p is the title of the currently selected page. Now say you want the title of the currently selected page to have a blue background so that it's visually highlighted. This is easy using CSS. li.selected greater than p, inside it background dash color colon blue semicolon closing semi-curly bracket. Here the CSS selector li.selected greater than p declares the pattern of elements to which we want to apply the blue style, colon, namely all p elements whose direct parent is an Li element with the CSS class of selected. The element P sharks closing P in the example matches this pattern, but P whales closing P does not match because its Li parent locks class equals code selected. If you were using XSL instead of CSS, you could do something similar. Less than XSL colon template space match equal code Li with open square bracket at class equal code selected closing square bracket slash P code and then greater than to close the XSL. The next line less than FO colon block background dash color equal code blue closing greater than. Next line less than XSL colon apply dash templates slash greater than to close it. The next line out nest less than slash FO colon block and then closing greater than to close the FO colon block. Then we need to close the XSL template by starting with less than slash XSL colon template closing greater than. Here, the path expression li open square bracket at class equal code selected closing square bracket slash P is equivalent to the CSS selector li that selected greater than P in the previous example. What CSS and XSL have in common is that they are both declarative languages for specifying the styling of a document. Imagine what life would be like if you had to use imperative approach. In JavaScript, using the core document object model DOM API, the result might look something like this. var li elements equal document.get elements by tag name with an argument code li semicolon. Next time for var I equals to 0 semicolon I less than list elements that length semicolon I plus plus inside it if li elements argument parameter array with argument I dot class name equal code selected, then inside it var children equal li elements parameter array with an argument I the child node semicolon. Next line 4 var j equals to 0 semicolon j less than children dot length semicolon j plus plus. Then inside it var child equal children argument j if child dot node semicolon. Next line if child dot node type equal node dot element underscore node and child dot tag name equal code p. Inside it child dot set attribute argument code style comma code background underscore color colon blue semicolon then 1 2 3 4 semi closing semi-curly bracket. This JavaScript imperatively sets the element P sharks with a closing P to have a blue background, but the code is awful. Not only is it much longer and harder to understand than the CSS and XSL equivalents, but it also has some serious problems. If the selected class is removed, i.e. because the user clicks a different page, the blue color won't be removed, even if the code is rerun, and so the item will remain highlighted until the entire page is reloaded. With CSS, the browser automatically detects when the li.selected greater than P rule no longer applies and removes the blue background as soon as the selected class is removed. If you want to take advantage of a new API such as document.get elements by class name with an argument code selected or even document.evaluate function which may improve performance, you have to rewrite the code. On the other hand, browser vendors can improve the performance of CSS and XPath without breaking compatibility. In a web browser, using declarative CSS styling is much better than manipulating styles imperatively in JavaScript. Similarly, in databases, declarative query language like SQL turn out to be much better than imperative query APIs. MapReduce querying. MapReduce is a programming model for processing large amounts of data in bulk across many machines, popularized by Google. A limited form of MapReduce is supported by NoSQL data stores, including MongoDB and CouchDB, as a mechanism for performing read-only queries across many data documents. MapReduce in general is described in more detail in Chapter 10. For now, we'll just briefly discuss MongoDB's use of the model. MapReduce is neither a declarative query language nor a fully imperative query API, but somewhere in between. The logic of the query is expressed with snippets of code, which are called repeatedly by the processing framework. It is based on the map, also known as collect and reduce, also known as fold or inject functions that exist in many functional programming languages. To give an example, imagine you are a marine biologist and you add an observation record to your database every time you see an animal in the ocean. Now you want to generate a report saying how many sharks you have sighted per month. In PostgreSQL, you might express that query like this: select date underscore trunc argument quote month, comma observation underscore timestamp closing parenthesis as observation underscore month. Next time, sum argument num underscore animals closing parenthesis as total underscore animals. Next time, from observations. Next line, where family equal quote sharks. Next line, group by observation underscore month semicolon. The date underscore trunc argument quote month comma timestamp function determines the calendar month containing timestamp and returns another timestamp representing the beginning of that month. In other words, it rounds a timestamp down to the nearest month. This query first filters the observation to only show species in the sharks family, then groups the observations by the calendar month in which they occurred, and finally adds up the number of an animal seen in all observations in that month. The same can be expressed with MongoDB's MapReduce feature as follows: db.observations.mapreduce, inside it is function map function, inside this is var year equal this.observation timestamp that get full year function semicolon, next line var month equal this.observation timestamp that get month function plus 1 semicolon, then next line emit argument year plus quote plus month comma this.num animals closing parenthesis semicolon, then next line semi-curly bracket comma function reduce argument key comma values, then next line return array.sum argument values, then next line semi-curly bracket comma, next line open semi-curly bracket, next line query colon argument opening semi-curly bracket family colon quote sharks closing semi-curly bracket, next line out colon quote monthly shark report, next line semi-curly bracket, next line open close parenthesis semicolon. The filter to consider only shark species can be specified declaratively. This is a MongoDB specific extension to MapReduce. The JavaScript function map is called once for every document that matches query, with this set to the document object. The map function emits a key, a string consisting of year and month, such as quote 2013-12 or quote 2014-1, and a value, the number of animals in that observation. Fourth, the key value pairs emitted by map are grouped by key. For all key value pairs within the same key, i.e. the same month and year, the reduce function is called once. Fifth, the reduce function adds up the number of animals from all observations in a particular month. 6. The final output is written to the collection monthly shark report. For example, see observations collection contains these two documents, opening semi-curly bracket, next line observation timestamp colon date.parse argument string man comma 25 dec 1995 12 colon 34 colon 56 GMT quote closing parenthesis comma, next line family quote shark family colon, quote sharks, comma, next line species, colon, quote, Carcharodon, Carcharias, quote, comma, next line nam animas, colon 3. Next line closing semi-curly bracket. Then next line opening semi-curly bracket. Next line observation timestamp, colon, date dot parse, argument, quote, Chu, comma, 12 dec 1995, space 16 colon 17 colon 18 space GMT, quote, closing parenthesis, comma, next line family colon, quote, sharks, comma, next line species, colon, quote, Carcharias taurus, quote, comma, next line nam animas, quote, 4, next line semi curly bracket. The map function would be called once for each document, resulting in emit, quote, 1995-12, 3, and emit 1995-12, 4. Subsequently, the reduce function would be called with reduce argument, quote, 1995-12, quote, argument 3, 7, return argument 3, 4, returning 7.